Tonight on Channel 4, the film version of Dennis Potter's acclaimed and controversial Brimstone and Treacle.
There is no hope for Patty. There are no such things as miracles.
Look here, old Tom, you don't know anything about you, not the first thing. I mean, you could be the devil himself for all we...
Help us to understand the mystery of pain. A little happiness till dreams come true. After the break, the very latest from the city in Business Daily. Then at 6:30, make your day the Channel 4 Daily Way. 3 hours of news, information and entertainment.
With so many compact washing powders around, you may be a little unsure about which to choose. However, some people made up their minds ages ago. Experts like Hoover, Indesit, Service, AEG, and many more recommend Ariel Ultra because they know nothing cleans better. Ariel Ultra. Most cleaning experts are queuing up to recommend it.
I said, she said, I said, she said.
Petit Filou. The deliciously creamy texture and natural fruity taste makes Petit Filou fromage frais simply irresistible. Petit Filou from Yoplait.
Good morning, I'm Caroline Wright and welcome to Business Daily. This morning, the CBI's Manifesto for Industry in the 1990s and a boost to British entrepreneurship from the executive dole queue. First, though, this morning's market news. There have been strong gains on the international stock markets overnight. In Tokyo, the Nikkei is up almost 200 points, taking it over 27,000. That rise was partly prompted by a big jump in New York share prices. The Dow closed up 54 points. On the currency markets, the dollar is a little weaker all around. Against the yen, it's at 134.7, and against the mark, it's now at 166.60. Sterling is also up against the dollar at 179.10. Well, the employers' organisation, the Confederation of British Industry, today sets out what it calls its business agenda for the 90s. Against a background of sharply reduced business confidence, falling investment and rising unemployment, the CBI hopes that the political parties will take note of its recommendations and that industry will climb to the top of the agenda in what may well turn out to be an election year. Susanna Antunes reports.
John Banham and his team have managed to put together a business manifesto that runs to nearly 100 detailed recommendations. But the thrust of the CBI's arguments focus on 3 key issues: bridging the investment gap in skills, transport and environmental protection between Britain and its competitors is, it believes, a priority. National attitudes to manufacturing must be changed to withstand increased competition, and the battle against inflation must be won.
Inflation here is running 4 or 5 points higher than it is in our principal competitors, and every point of inflation is costing the country, in terms of lost investment, something of the order of £5 billion a year. That's 50% of the fixed investment by manufacturing industry. So any idea that the inflationary battle is won is simply nonsense. It is by no means won. And we have to keep up the pressure, and we have to recognize that inflation, and tackling inflation, is a job not just for manufacturing, not just for the private sector, but for all of us.
Business confidence has now sunk to a 10-year low. Unemployment is rising and investment is falling. So the CBI's manifesto serves as a timely reminder of the need to focus on industry in what could be a general election year.
1 in 5 men who are made redundant in Britain will consider starting up their own business. That's according to a survey published today. And the redundancy management firm World Tech says the proportion of women likely to go into business on their own is even higher. Jane Alexander has this report.
With unemployment already topping the 2 million mark, many of those joining the dole queues must dream of going out on their own and setting up their own business. But few people actually turn these dreams into reality.
About 15 to 20% will actually consider it, but a much smaller number will actually take the plunge and go into business on their own account.
Women are more adventurous. Around half of those who show positive interest in starting a business will actually go ahead and do it. British Aerospace, Royal Ordnance and ITN have all employed World Tech Ventures to help with employees that they've made redundant. So what advice does it give to those who want to go it alone?
We help them to develop their own business idea, because we help them to assess whether there is a business there. We help them to identify the market, to put their business plan together, to gather all the resources actually before they start. So when they start, they've identified the market, they know what business they're in, but also they've got all the resources in place right from day one.
Setting up your own business is an extremely risky thing to do, as many new businesses do fail. But getting advice beforehand can help. World Tech claims that over 80% of those it's counselled are still in business after 4 years.
Well, the FTSE index closed down more than 20 yesterday, although there have been gains elsewhere overnight. With me now is Jeff Foster, our market reporter. Jeff, Wall Street went up by over 50 points yesterday. What knock-on effect is that going to have in London?
I would have thought it'd do us a world of good. We was worried yesterday about a possible rise in the German interest rates on Thursday by the Bundesbank, and I would have thought the Wall Street rise has come as a much-needed boost again to the market. There's never any sellers around at the moment. I'm sure buyers are coming. Market makers will mark all the old US favourites up like Glaxo and ICI this morning, and I would have thought buyers will come in again this morning, particularly as over in America they're talking Wall Street up over 3,000. I think Morgan Stanley's even saying it's going to go up to 3,200, so it should give us a really good boost this morning.
That's right, it's 14 points off its record.
That's right, yes, and we keep on flirting with new peaks here, and I'm sure we'll continue to go to new peaks as long as Wall Street behaves itself.
But of course attention's all going to be attracted, I would have thought, to Robert Maxwell, but we'll be talking about that later on.
That's right, okay,
yeah, so there
fine.
You are. The teaser for there, but that's all for now. Coming up next, the latest national and international news on Channel 4 Daily.
Good morning, you're watching the Channel 4 Daily on Wednesday the 17th of April. Coming up later, more business news, box office and international sports news. But first, the news from around the world. President Bush sends troops to protect the Kurds inside Iraq. But relief agencies warn the safe haven may come too late to prevent tragedy. And still wanted, John McCarthy's 5th year as a Beirut hostage. President Bush says soldiers from key allies in the Gulf War, including Britain and France, are to set up safety zones for Kurdish people within Iraq. Mr. Bush said the deployment of troops would begin immediately, but was adamant that American troops would not be drawn into Iraq's civil war. The president's announcement last night followed severe criticism that he'd done too little, too late for the Kurds. But Mr. Bush admitted that he had underestimated the extent of the refugee crisis.
The government of Turkey, along with U.S., British, and French military units and numerous international organizations, have launched a massive relief operation. But despite these efforts, hunger, Malnutrition, disease, and exposure are taking their grim toll. No one can see the pictures or hear the accounts of this human suffering. Men, women, and most painfully of all, innocent children, and not be deeply moved.
Well, here President Bush's announcement is seen as endorsing John Major's campaign for a safe haven for the refugees. Both Britain and France are joining America in sending troops to operate the new camps. And Downing Street says the British soldiers are there for humanitarian reasons, but also to physically protect the refugees. Last night, Iraq asked the UN for permission to sell nearly $1 billion worth of oil in order to buy food. And diplomats say the request could be used to pressure Iraq into ending its attacks on the Kurds. The Allies' presence in northern Iraq will be welcomed by relief workers, but they're warning it could be too late.
Spectacle seen by millions throughout the world of young and old dying from starvation and exposure was the catalyst for the Safe Havens plan. 600,000 refugees, most of them Kurds, are now said to be stranded in the Turkish mountains. And relief workers are warning that up to 1,000 may be dying daily along this border alone.
She had no food and she had diarrhea.
The arrival of American troops at this camp at Diyarbakir in southern Turkey has been greeted with great relief.
We've done a leaflet drop asking these people that when we come in to come up and identify themselves, and they're coming up to us in droves and offering assistance.
The men have been trying to give out supplies equally, as the mountains have been hampering distribution. The Safe Havens plan will bring the people to the supplies by encouraging the Kurds to return to northern Iraq, where the geography allows relief to get through. So news that Allied forces are to set up protective camps has already been hailed by Kurdish leaders who've been pleading for help. The Prime Minister's been widely congratulated for his tireless efforts to save the Kurds from Saddam's brutality, but there are already fears that his master plan could backfire and Allied forces could face battles with Saddam's troops inside Iraq. Though the Bush administration has stressed forces won't be expected to fight, senior Whitehall sources say they would be required to protect the Kurds.
Well, with me in the studio is Hoshar Zebari of the Kurdistan Front. Mr. Zebari, good morning to you. What is your reaction to President Bush's announcement?
Well, this is an encouraging development, something which we have been waiting for quite some time from the U.S. administration to react to this catastrophic situation unfolding on the borders with Iran and Turkey. Although it has come late, in fact, I mean, had it been earlier, I'm sure many lives would have been saved.
Do you think it is too little too late then?
Well, I think it has come too late, and many lives would have been saved, in fact, had this decision been taken earlier.
But is it too little? Does it go far enough for you, the conception that President Bush has of these safe havens?
Well, the numbers are not that significant, in fact, but the significance of the force presence in northern Iraq, I'm sure, will deter Saddam Hussein from carrying out any further military operations and attacks against the refugees. So in that sense, it is very significant indeed.
Do you think that Saddam will risk it and attack these safe havens if he is pursuing guerrilla fighters?
I doubt it very much. I think Saddam Hussein will be deterred by this decision, and he will not carry out any operation north of the 36 parallel line which have been designated by the United States.
Now, a crucial question here is how the Kurdish people perceive these safe havens. Clearly, President Bush wants to get his troops out of there as quickly as possible, but do you see them as the nucleus, as it were, for some kind of autonomous Kurdish zone within Iraq?
Well, this is a temporary measure, and even the presence of the U.S., British, and American forces will be a temporary one, in fact. I think in a later stage, you may see some form of United Nations presence or peacekeeping force, because the root cause of this problem, in fact, is political. It's not an issue of refugees. I mean, these people who want them to go back to their homes and cities. And if this idea of safe haven, which is now being supported one way or another, should be extended to cover all the towns and the cities where these people should go back.
Mr. Zebari, thank you very much indeed. Today is the 5th year of captivity for Beirut hostage John McCarthy, and people are being urged to wear a yellow ribbon to put pressure on the government to do more to win his release. The Overseas Development Minister, Linda Chalker, has promised to ask Iran to use its influence when she goes to Tehran this week.
John boy, I told her. And John boy, I saw a man grow. I watched the man deepen. And it was a real joy to be a witness to that.
The voice of Beirut hostage Brian Keenan on his release last year. For his friend John McCarthy, the waiting goes on. The Foreign Office is more convinced than ever that Iran has a decisive influence in the release of the 13 Western hostages in Lebanon. John McCarthy and his fellow prisoners are widely believed to be held by Hezbollah, the Party of God, which is Iran's main ally in Lebanon. Relations with Iran have been improving. Many MPs believe the time is now right to exchange ambassadors.
I think we can be a bit more optimistic. Now with Roger Cooper released, that the last time I spoke to the Iranians, that was definitely a stumbling block. Now that he's out, I hope very much that we will get on with exchanging ambassadors between Iran and ourselves. We've got diplomatic relations, but we still haven't appointed the full ambassadors. And if that happens, then I think we will have the combined help of the Syrian and Iranian governments to try to locate the hostages and get them out.
The Overseas Development Minister, Linda Chalker, will be in Tehran for talks this weekend. The hostage issue will be a chief priority, but the Foreign Office is insistent there can be no exchange of ambassadors until the hostages are freed.
The time has not yet come when those who hold hostages believe it's in their interest to deliver them up. We must impress upon the Iranians that the time has come. It's been ripe for a long, long time, and we want to see the hostages back. A dreadful business.
Many observers believe there are grounds for increased optimism about the hostages' release. Now the Gulf War is over, and the value of holding the hostages diminishes along with Western involvement in Lebanon.
These groups have come to a point, it's now more than a year, I think, where the hostages have stopped serving their original purpose for them. And they're just really hanging on to them for no good reason, and they're trying to squeeze the maximum that it can out of them politically and otherwise. And it's really for them, it's a way of finding a graceful and profitable way out of this trap.
But for John McCarthy and the other hostages, there are complications. No one can be absolutely sure of Iran's influence over the hostage takers, who are still insisting on the release of several hundred Lebanese Shias being held by Israel. In turn, Israel wants the release of its soldiers being held in Lebanon. Tim Friend, ITN, Central London.
And that's the news now. Let's catch up on the overnight market news with Caroline.
Thank you, Dermot. First, let's take a look at the overnight market news. There have been strong gains on the international stock markets overnight. In Tokyo, the Nikkei is up 250 points, taking it over 27,000. That rise was partly prompted by a big jump in New York share prices. The Dow closed up 54 points. On the currency markets, the dollar is a little weaker all around. Against the yen, it's at 134.70. Against the markets now, 166.60. Sterling is also up against the dollar at 179.10. Well, the Employers' Organisation, the Confederation of British Industry, today sets out what it calls its business agenda for the 90s. Against a background of sharply reduced business confidence, falling investment and rising unemployment, the CBI hopes that the political parties will take note of its recommendations and that industry will climb to the top of the agenda in what may well turn out to be an election year. Susanna Antunes reports.
John Banham and his team have managed to put together a business manifesto that runs to nearly 100 detailed recommendations. But the thrust of the CBI's arguments focus on three key issues. Bridging the investment gap in skills, transport and environmental protection between Britain and its competitors is, it believes, a priority. National attitudes to manufacturing must be changed to withstand increased competition, and the battle against inflation must be won.
Inflation here is running 4 or 5 points higher than it is in our principal competitors. And every point of inflation is costing the country, in terms of lost investment, something of the order of £5 billion a year. That's 50% of fixed investment by manufacturing industry.
Business and the government must focus on these objectives, says the CBI, if industry is to meet the challenge of a single European market. But it also believes the UK should adopt the narrow bands of the exchange rate mechanism, as opposed to the present broad bands, as quickly as possible. It should also commit itself to a single currency.
The narrower the bands within the ERM, the more stability there is, and the greater the commitment to squeezing inflation out of our economy. And of course, once we get into the narrow bands of the ERM, and once we get inflation down to French and German levels, then it does make sense to move gradually and over time to a single currency.
Business confidence has now sunk to a 10-year low. Unemployment is rising and investment is falling, so the CBI's manifesto serves as a timely reminder of the need to focus on industry in what could be a general election year.
Well, that's all for now. After the break, box office pay tribute to Sir David Lean, who died yesterday. That's in a few minutes.
AA AutoQuote could find you a better deal on your car insurance. For a free quote, call free on 0800 444 777 today.
The Queen said to His Majesty, "My chicken, here's a tragedy, for there is no more golden churn to grace your slice of brown." "Disaster," interrupted he. "To all my subjects I decree, I'll give them half my kingdom if they find some in this town." The Queen smiled and shook her head. "No, wait, just look at this," she said. "You have got some," exclaimed the King. "My absolutely favourite thing." "That's why," she said, "we've changed the name and called it Golden Crown." With 2 spoonfuls in every pack, you can taste the butter in Golden Crown. Erecting fences used to be slow and expensive, until the Met Post came along. Eek. Putting up or repairing fences is easy with the Met Post. There's no digging, no concreting, no rotting, no problems. So save yourself time, effort and money with Met Post.
The leading non-biological powder left this stain behind, but now there's a new non-bio that won't. Very Ultra.
You won't catch me using a spot cream, because this is invisible. It works too. New Clearasil gel, unspottable.